So by 1993, you had a gun connection that can get you any gun or bomb. And you guys had a big hit list back then. The Lucchese's were killing Gambinos, and, essentially, what type of weapons were you getting during this time? Because guns I can understand, but you're actually getting bombs as well?
Yeah, I was actually getting remote control bombs.
Okay. So this is like C4, or how are these bombs actually put together?
Well, my connection was an Israeli guy. And I don't know what it, I don't know what it was made of, but they were remote control bombs at the time. With a remote control. So you had to wire it up. You had to wire it, make sure the wires were connected, the right wires, and make sure you were a certain distance from the target for it to work. So yeah, I had access to those and any other firearm that I wanted. Uzi machine guns, shotguns, silencers, automatics, everything. AK-47s, M16s.
Did you yourself ever detonate a bomb?
I tried to, yeah. But it didn't work because the guy who was responsible for putting the wires together put the two wrong wires in different spots. So the answer to your question is yes, I tried to detonate a bomb. I stuck it on the guy's car. I would try to detonate it, but it wasn't working. And then when we got the bomb back, we found out that he cross-wired it. So, well, thank God he did. So,
okay.
Well, thank God he did.
Yeah. Well, after the whole situation with Frankie the Blonde, you had these guns, and you and your cousin Frankie, a lot of Frankies, by the way, in this life I see, you guys got into a stolen car with a bunch of guns to carry out a hit, but you ended up getting pulled over.
That was a different hit. That's when we got arrested. Yeah, so.
Right. Can you say who you were trying to hit at that point or no?
Just to get into it with you a little bit, we were going on another hit. There was a guy, an associate of ours, who was responsible for stealing a car. He didn't look behind his rearview mirror. He parked the car. We went there to go get the car, stolen car, because that's the hit car, and we had a crash car. And the FBI was laying on the car the day before and arrested us. And I had a .38 caliber. I always carried a gun with me every day. Didn't get the real equipment. The real equipment was back in Brooklyn, where I had machine guns waiting to go back to do the hit. Luckily, we got arrested because we probably would have got killed.
Well, you get arrested for the gun, but then you end up catching a federal case for a heroin trafficking ring.
Right. So while I was out on bail fighting the gun case, I get arrested with the DEA with a federal drug case from Manhattan to Boston, Southern District.
By this time, how big was your drug operation?
How big?
Yeah.
I would say back then I was probably making 50 to 100,000 a week.
Okay. And were you still getting the drugs from the triads, or did you have different connects at that point?
I had to connect with Colombians for cocaine, but mostly the heroin was come from the Chinese. So I would get the Chinese bricks. They were £1.50 packages. And we would break them up, and I would send them up to Boston, and we'd get much more money for it out of state.
I mean, when you talk about hard drugs, I mean, marijuana, usually not a lot of violence that goes with it. But you talk about cocaine, especially heroin, you see a lot of violence. You see a lot of rip-offs, kick doors, and so forth. Now, during the time that you had your drug operation, were there any, deals gone bad, people ripping you off and so forth, or was everyone pretty much scared of the Lucchese's and left you alone?
No, you can't deal drugs when you're in the mob. So that's a cardinal rule. I broke that rule, and I was dealing drugs. I wasn't supposed to. So you don't advertise. Never once did I mention the Lucchese's. Never once did I mention I was a made guy. I just did it off of my reputation. So everybody pretty much was in line. One time, eventually it went bad, the relationship with my Puerto Rican friend, who, there was like $400,000 or $500,000 that he didn't pay. So eventually, yeah, there were mishaps where things went wrong, where his guy stole from him, or, it's kind of like a chain reaction. So it was guys underneath him that stole from him, and then eventually he couldn't pay me, so it was like a trickle up,
Okay, so in that situation, your guy owes you $500,000. What do you do about that?
Well, I tried to work it out with him where he would pay me back. And at that time, he was having a lot of problems up there. He wasn't able to pay back. And it started pissing me off, and tried to kill him.
What happened?
I was sitting in the car with him. He caught the move. Luckily, he caught the move. He jumped out of the car, started running. I started throwing shots at him, and he got away.
So you never got that $500,000, though?
No, it's still, no. Yeah. I see your point. Either way, I'm not getting paid, so. But back then, I had no conscience. I just wanted to get even at that point.